Hello friends, I hope all of you are doing good and welcome to this video. So as you can see from the thumbnail of this video, that today we are going to discuss about the Chernobyl disaster. Okay, Chernobyl nuclear disaster to be specific. And as you can see here that this disaster happened on April 26 of 1986. So that is why I think it is better to discuss it now, because only after a few days it will be 86, that means 14 and 37th. It's 37 years ago this disaster happened. So what is this disaster about? Let us learn about this Chernobyl nuclear disaster. What happened and what were its outcomes? Okay, about those things we are going to learn in this video. So what is the Chernobyl disaster? So this is a picture just after the disaster, and you can see the extent of the damage here from this picture. So this was a very severe disaster, severe damage due to nuclear reactor blast, nuclear reactor explosion. And okay, so before we proceed for the discussion, so where is Chernobyl exactly? Chernobyl is in present-day Ukraine. Okay, this is Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine, and Chernobyl is located somewhere here. Okay, in Ukraine. And back then, when the disaster happened, it was in the Soviet Union or USSR. Okay, this is Russia here. So Chernobyl is in modern-day Ukraine. So the Chernobyl disaster was a catastrophic nuclear accident. Okay, it was a very catastrophic nuclear accident that occurred on April 26. So this may be an MCQ question. So when did this happen? And the answer would be April 26 of 1986 at Chernobyl nuclear power plant in Ukraine. Okay, it happened at Chernobyl nuclear power plant in Ukraine, which was then part of the Soviet Union, as we have already discussed. It is considered the worst nuclear disaster in history. Okay, worst nuclear disaster in history, and had a profound impact on the surrounding environment and population. Okay. So now the question arises that why these nuclear radiations or nuclear reactor disasters are so hazardous. Okay, why are they so hazardous? So nuclear radiation is hazardous because it consists of high energy particles. Okay, very high energy particles and waves that can ionize atoms and molecules, disrupting the chemical bonds that hold them together. Okay, so they contain very high energy particles. Okay, and those particles may destroy the bonds, chemical bonds. Okay, in chemistry, if you have studied in chemistry, chemical bonds which are there in atoms and molecules. Okay, so atoms and molecules are broken. So now what happens in human beings or living organisms? So this can cause damage to living tissues, leading to range of health effects from acute radiation sickness to long-term effects such as cancer and genetic mutation. Okay, so these radiations that have very high energy particles, so they can damage our tissues, our living tissues of human beings or other living beings or animals. And radiation sickness can happen, like vomiting, sickness, other forms of sickness. And in the long term, very hazardous diseases like cancer can happen, and also genetic mutations also may happen in the long run. So that is why the nuclear radiations are very hazardous. So what actually happened in Chernobyl on April 26, 1986? So okay. So the disaster occurred during a routine safety test of reactor number 4, okay, at Chernobyl nuclear power plant. During the test, a sudden power surge led to a steam explosion, okay, and subsequent fire, which caused massive release of radioactive material into the atmosphere. Okay, so due to this failure of a nuclear reactor, okay, there was an steam explosion and massive release of radioactive material into the atmosphere. We have already learned about how these radioactive materials are harmful for humans and living beings, and when such a huge amount of radioactive material is released into the atmosphere, then you can imagine what level of damage it can cause to the nearby human population or animal population. Okay, and this happened due to a sudden power surge. So the explosion and fire killed 2 plant workers instantly, okay, and caused an estimated 29 immediate deaths due to acute radiation sickness, okay, as per the data available. So however, the long-term health effects of the disaster is still being studied, okay, because the nuclear radiations, they remain in the atmosphere for a very long time, and therefore any population which lives near the explosion site, okay, so that population gets exposed to the nuclear radiation, and therefore long-term health effects may be there, okay. Long-term health effects, like we have discussed already, cancers may happen or other genetic mutations may happen. And it is said that from unconfirmed report, anywhere between 4,000 to around 95,000 deaths have occurred in the long term due to this nuclear explosion, nuclear reactor explosion, or the release of hazardous nuclear material into the atmosphere, which resulted due to the explosion of the nuclear reactor. So the Chernobyl disaster led to the permanent evacuation of nearly 350,000 people were permanently settled elsewhere from the surrounding areas, okay, including the entire city of Pripyat, okay, which was just 3 kilometers away from the plant. So this city, Pripyat, was just very close to the nuclear power plant, and all total 350,000 people were they were evacuated, and they were sent to safer places after the nuclear disaster happened, and the whole city of Pripyat was evacuated too, which was just next to the plant. Now, since back then Ukraine used to be in the Soviet Union, so Soviet government initially tried to downplay the severity. They did not understand how much damage such a nuclear reactor explosion could have done. But international radiation monitoring stations quickly detected very high levels of radiation in the atmosphere. Okay, the Soviet government eventually acknowledged the accident on April 28, 1986. After 2 days of the disaster happened, the Soviet Union government acknowledged the nuclear disaster under international pressure, because the international organizations they detected very high level of radiation in the atmosphere. So the disaster also had significant environmental impact. The release of radioactive material contaminated the surrounding land, water, air, and had long-term effects on plant and animal life in the area. Okay, so as we say, we often come across the term that nuclear weapons, okay, nuclear weapon or nuclear bombs. So we are always afraid of these two terms. Okay, we never want that there should be nuclear war anywhere in the world, because like in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, nuclear bombs were dropped, and many people, maybe hundreds of thousands of people had to die in those two places. So similar and also in those places long-term health effects were observed in among the residents there. So such nuclear radiations cause huge damage in the long term, not only to human beings but also to plants, environment, and animals that reside in that area or reside in the area near the explosion site. So yeah, so they also, so such explosion of radioactive material also contaminate land, water, air, and these places become uninhabitable. Okay, So the disaster had far-reaching political and social consequences, okay, both within the Soviet Union and internationally. Yes, this was like one of such first of this kind of disaster, and that is why it had social and political consequences. And somewhere the Soviet Union government back then was blamed because of their handling of the disaster. It led to increased scrutiny of nuclear safety and the Soviet government's handling of the situation. Okay, so increased nuclear safety. Okay, scrutiny of nuclear safety and how the Soviet Union government back then handled the situation. And it also contributed to growing anti-nuclear sentiment around the world. Okay, so nuclear power plants have been installed in many countries, and how much safe they are, how much secure they are. So about those things, questions were being asked, and growing anti-nuclear sentiments around the world. So the cleanup and containment of the disaster site were monumental tasks. Of course, after such explosions happen and lots of radioactive materials are released into the atmosphere, so the cleaning up and containment, containment means stop further spreading of the radioactive material of the disaster site were very difficult task. Okay, a massive concrete and steel structure called sarcophagus was built around the damaged reactor to contain the remaining radioactive material. Okay, so the reactor which was damaged from there, so that the radioactive material that is emitted, that can be contained. So a sarcophagus was built around that reactor. In 2016, a new containment structure called the New Safe Confinement was completed, which intended to prevent the further release of radioactive material for the next 100 years. Okay, so these steps have been taken to contain the release of further radioactive material into the atmosphere from the blast site. So this is the sarcophagus we have just discussed here. This is highlighted in yellow color, sarcophagus, concrete and steel structure. So in order to contain the release of radioactive material from the damaged nuclear reactor. And you can see this is a very massive structure. So the disaster had significant economic impact also. Okay, so both in terms of cost of cleanup. Okay, cleaning up was a very costly and difficult affair, and long-term effect on the surrounding area. The surrounding region is still largely uninhabitable, as we have already discussed, and economic and social consequences of the disaster are still being felt today. Okay, so of course, after such a disaster, economic and social impacts will be there, and cleaning up was very costly. Okay, and the surrounding area is still uninhabitable, so very few human beings or other animals can reside in the nearby area. The Chernobyl disaster also had important implications on the future of nuclear power. It led to increased safety regulation. Okay, increased safety regulation of the nuclear powers and scrutiny of nuclear power plants, how nuclear power plants are built, how they are operated. So on those, scrutiny was increased and contributed to shift towards renewable energy sources. Okay, so since nuclear power plants, it is not that safe to run nuclear power plants, so renewable energy sources were being explored, like solar power, wind power, etc. Okay, so that the dependence on nuclear power can be minimized or reduced. So the disaster remains a powerful symbol of dangers of nuclear power. Okay, and the importance of responsible management of nuclear materials. Okay, responsible management of nuclear materials is very important here. It continues to be the subject of scientific study. Okay, political debate till date. Okay, and then artistic interpretation, and serves as reminder of potential consequences of human error and technological failure. Okay, so consequence of human error and technological failure. So due to these two reasons, the nuclear reactor blast at Chernobyl happened. So these things like these are the main consequences of this Chernobyl nuclear disaster. So like still people still talk about, and there is a television series also on Chernobyl nuclear disaster. So a lot of scientific studies have been done, political debates on whether nuclear power is safe or not, or countries should continue with nuclear power plants or not, and artistic interpretation. Many artists, they have drawn how the nuclear disaster would look like, and like technological failure. Okay, if some like there is a failure to handle some technological advancement or like this type of situations, then what may happen, how it can impact our society in the long run, or for a long term it can impact our society. So these things are still being debated, and there is still matters of discussion. So friends, I hope this discussion would be helpful to you, and we have also got an idea of what Chernobyl disaster was about. And one more thing I would like to add here. So the Fukushima disaster in Japan, that was also similar kind. About Fukushima we'll discuss later in another video. But I hope this discussion has been useful to you, and if you like this discussion, please like the video, subscribe to this channel, and also share this video. I would like to conclude by thank you for watching this.